So today I want to look at a post that someone put online, and it attracted a lot of attention. It's under the title of the Derekh, of the road. It's a very common term in the what they call the frum community, the religious community, for people who started religious and then left the path. So they call them, the rabbis and the leaders always speak about the Derekh, the path, the way that you should take. So if you veer off that track, you're off the Derekh. And now it became an acronym, OTD. So this, people refer to themselves as OTD. Grew up religious and they're not religious anymore. So this is apparently a young woman who posted it on Facebook. And she started by saying, I'm your neighbor, your friend's sister, your daughter-in-law, your daughter, your mother, your wife, maybe I'm you. I'm willing to bet there's a lot of us out there. So she started talking about how, growing up as a woman in the Orthodox community, she feels very marginalized and discriminated against. And so the question is also, what is the solution? What do you do? What do you do to address that? So she speaks about those people who are what she calls the loud, raging Orthodox feminists, who question everything from rabbis to skirt length to nidah to hair covering to women's roles in Judaism, and she says, I cannot do that. I cannot do that because I'll jeopardize myself and the community, and it's not going to help. It's interesting though that just now, I think yesterday it was, the OU issued a decree, a new gezerah or a verdict, whatever you call it, that says that synagogues, Orthodox synagogues, cannot hire women to serve in any religious function other than teachers. They could be teachers in formal education in the synagogue, but they cannot hold a position of spiritual leadership. So that makes, just in our area, immediate area, 2 synagogues, Bet Shalom and Ohev Shalom, out of the Orthodox circle because they have a maharat. So they're going to be a correspondence going on. They're not going to change their minds. And someone who wrote to me about that yesterday, I said, you look at the parasha, it's written there. In chapter 10, verse 11, Paro tells Moshe, when he wants to leave Mitzrayim with the whole nation, he says, Lochem, lechuna ha-gevarim v'yivdu et Adonai, ki ota atem mevakshim. So Pharaoh himself says it's only for the men to serve God. So why are the women interested? So the OU and Pharaoh are on the same page, and we, could be happy. But this obviously is a myopic vision. They don't see it and realize what is happening. They cannot turn the wheel back. Women were pushed aside for too long. There were, in the past, women who served in leadership roles. In the Tanakh, of course, you have Devorah and Huldah and Miriam and other women. In rabbinic times, their role was eroded because of influence of the Greeks, who were not very much in favor of women, and that's also the period where we got the beracha, Shelo asani isha, right? That Hashem has not made me. The man says, "Thank God for not making me a woman." The woman says, "Thank God for making me according to His will. I'll accept whatever He gives me." I found out years ago that it came through the Greek channels, and it's not an original beracha. It doesn't really fit the whole structure of the Birkot HaShahar because they're all positive. Thank you for this, thank you for that, and all of a sudden, thank you for not being this, for not being that. It's discriminatory. I stopped saying these barachot about 15 or maybe 20 years ago, and I'm still alive. I'm doing fine. I'm good with that. This week I saw the Siddur play in Berman Academy, and it was interesting because they were boys and girls. So the boys were singing how every day they say in the morning, Baruch Ata Hashem Asher Kiddushanu V'Tzivanu Al Mitzvat Tzitzit, and the girls were singing, every morning we say Baruch Ata Hashem She'asani Kirtzono, right? And it was interesting, when you put the boys and girls together, and they're for all modern families, what they sing about, the boys sing about a positive mitzvah they take upon themselves, and the girls are singing about being submissive and passive and just accepting their role. So we have a way to go, but it's changing. We have more maharat. We have women who are ordained as rabbis. In the tradition of in the last 300 years, the first woman to have been ordained not ordained, served as a rabbi, was a woman who lived in the border of Kurdistan and Iraq. Her name was Osnat Barazani. Her father was a Rosh Yeshiva, and her husband as well. But when they both died, she took over the leadership of the yeshiva. She would teach the students from behind a curtain, but there were people would send her questions, and she corresponded with rabbis in Iran and Iraq. So anyway, this is just like a side note about women's roles. So, but what she writes about, and that was an interesting, like the way the conversation evolved. She said that at a certain point she just snapped, that she couldn't take anymore the sort of the religious oppression that she felt as an Orthodox woman. She says, yes, my husband noticed that I stopped going to shul. Sometimes annoyed him that I didn't attend all the community dinners, but at a certain point, he realized that he has his chevra in shul, and that he says, I mainly infringed on his guy time at Kiddush anyway, so now he's happy if she doesn't go to shul. He has his quiet time in the men's club, and he's fine with that. And so she says, what else? If you speak about of the Derekh, what for her means of the Derekh? She says, I still keep kosher, and that's because she feels she wants to have peace at the home with her husband, with her children, with guests. And also, and it's very common, for people who grew up religious, that they're not really interested, even if they leave religion, to eat non-kosher food. They just don't feel comfortable with it. It became such a taboo. She says, I still dress with tzniut guidelines in mind, meaning that modesty is still, she follows the standards of the community, but and she still maintains the friendship with other from women. But she says, I stopped covering my hair at home unless there is an unrelated male over 13 in the house. See how even when you are like, you consider yourself to be a maverick or like a breaking the law, but the greatest rebellion here is to walk in the house without covering your hair, which we spoke about, that Rabbi Mishash said years ago that women don't have to do. But she says, I've been caught bareheaded by unexpected visitors. Sometimes I don't scramble to cover it. It's my house. Okay, so this is the kind of rebellion. So now, she says, I basically do as little as possible. Now, this is one person, and I know I'm writing halachot, and I send every day, and I get interesting responses. So, because the people who read the halachot are from the full gamut, from the people who are consider themselves to be atheists or non-observant, reform, conservative, reconstructionist, and the Haredim on the other side. Everybody reads it. So some people are happy with this and not with the other. But some people respond and says, oh, this doesn't apply to us. It's not in our community. We don't have this problem. But they don't know. Because there are a lot of people who externally practice a certain way, but internally think and believe totally differently. They might not show it with their actions, or they might behave one way publicly, one way privately. They open up when they have someone that they feel that they can be confident, they have confidence with. So I get questions like that from people who secretly like, what do I do with Shabbat? What do I do with Kashrut? What do I do with that? And they feel that the more pressure is on them from their society, the more they want to leave everything behind. So when you give them options of what people call leniency, it's not leniency, it's actually helping them become part of Jewish observance, just in a different measure. Anyway, here's where she sort of made her point. She says, as far as taharat mishpaha, family purity, meaning going to the mikveh, I've always hated the practice and feel it had a detrimental effect on my marriage. Finally, after many years of frequent mikveh trips, I made a decision to give myself a break. My husband would never stay married to me if I told him I wasn't going to the mikveh anymore, and keeping my family together is my top priority. However, I was miserable and I had to do something. He knows I'm miserable, you still insist I keep going. So what happens here? Like he doesn't understand her, and this is when we speak about like the article I wrote yesterday about moms and dads religious wars. This is one area that flexibility is extremely difficult, because if, let's say, one side is kosher, the other side is not, and they love each other tremendously, they would somehow be able to, okay, I'll eat this, you'll eat that. This happens. I know families, or at home we eat this, outside you could go eat wherever you want. Shabbat, I know families that the husband says, I'll go to shul, you go, do whatever you want, or the opposite. But when it comes to Taharat HaMishpacha, family purity, so either if it's a mitzvah or that pertains to both. And if she doesn't go to the mikveh and he's religious, he cannot be with her, right? And if he's not religious and she wants to go to the mikveh, he would not be happy with that and try to force himself on her, and when she's not willing. So it's a big problem. And I've dealt with cases that this almost brought to divorce. That religious, like one side was religious, mainly the husband, and says if my wife doesn't do that, I'll have to get divorced, and I had to find a solution for them. So what she decided to do is just say, tell him that she can't go to the mikveh for legal complications. There are reasons to say, okay, I have a problem with this, a problem with that. I can't go to the mikveh, and this is something that is happening now in the Haredi community. Another thing that happens, which some people might find unbelievable, is that when we talk about abortion and protecting the fetus, is a growing tendency in the Haredi community to have an abortion immediately after they find that the woman got pregnant, because people get married very young, and they're not ready for that. The reason they get married young is because there's a pressure from the community. There's a strong pressure from the community. There's also the natural urge to be, to have a partner. They want to, but they can't have boyfriends or girlfriends. So the only option is to get married. But if you get married, you get pregnant in many cases, right? And they're not ready for that, to be a mother at 17 or 18 or 19. So it became trendy. I was, the first time I got a question like that, I was a little surprised. But then I spoke with people that I know who live in Lakewood, and they speak with the rabbis, and it became more and more common for young couples to come with the question of abortion, and for the rabbis to prescribe contraceptives beforehand, because they know that otherwise it's not going to work. And there was actually a TV series in Israel called Akara, or maybe it was a short movie, Baron, where it's a story, and again, it's based on on facts of a young woman who got married and did not want to get married. She was not ready for that, so she's taking the pill, but her husband and her mother-in-law don't know. So they take her to rabbis, they take her to doctors, they visit all the graves in Israel. She drank all the holy water, and every time she drinks the holy water with a pill. So this is something that is happening. But in her case, she already has children, she has a family, but she doesn't go to the mikveh. So basically, she put a barrier between her and her husband. Now, it's interesting because someone commented on that it's a man, of course. It's terrible. She's lying to her husband. And when you say that, you really have to roll back and look at the background of these laws, of the separation of family purity. The original halacha, when you look at the Torah, calls for the separation between a husband and wife on a regular basis to be 7 days only. That's it. The only time when a woman or a man had to count 7 extra days, what they call the Shiva Nekim, and then go to the mikveh, was if they had an STD, not OTD of the Derekh, STD, sexually transmitted diseases, and if that was the case, and they were afraid that the man or the woman has this disease, it would make sense for them to have complete separation, and even after they are healed, to count 7 clean days to make sure that the disease is completely gone, and then go to the mikveh. And even after that, they would keep monitoring it. At a certain point, it's about the 3rd, 4th century of the Common Era, meaning it's about 1700 years after the law was given. The Talmud says the following thing in the name of Rabbi Ze'ira, or Rabbi Zera. His name was Rabbi Ze'ira in Bavel, but in Eretz Israel, people couldn't pronounce the Ain, so they turned him into Rabbi Zera. So Rabbi Zera says, בנות ישראל החמירו על עצמן שאפילו רואות טיפת דם כחרדל יושבות עליו 7 נקיים. The women took it upon themselves to be strict, that even though they don't have to act with the period as they act with sexually transmitted diseases, they decided that every little question that they have on the matter, they will consider it of the strictest order, of a completely different order, that of diseases. Now, the rabbis hailed this as beautiful. They're holy. They're more concerned about purity. So that became legislated into practice and then into law, and now nobody could change it. In medieval times, this is something that Professor Avraham Grossman, who's an expert on medieval Jewry historian, has a book called V'huim Sholbach. It's about the role of women in medieval society. And he said that there was an interesting phenomenon in the Christian medieval society where Christian women took upon themselves a vow of celibacy or abstinence after they were married and had children. At a certain point, they became abstinent. And why did they do that? Because, to put it nicely, the men were pigs. And they did not respect their privacy. They did not respect their body. And the only way that they could tell the husband's hands off was by taking a religious vow. And he said, we are dedicated to Christ and to the church. You can't touch me. Okay, so the husband is a devout Christian. He doesn't want to burn in hell. So that's it. And Grossman says, we have no equivalent in Jewish literature. And I read that, it's like, I'm smiling because, of course we have. It happened so long ago, and it was so wisely disguised. The women didn't say, we don't have to do it anymore. They just stretched it over years and years, right? And the Gemara actually says, on the pasuk, Suga b'shoshanim, Arugat Hen Suga b'shoshanim, it's a pasuk from Shir HaShirim, that his lips are fenced with roses. So they say the laws of Nidar are like a fence of roses. That meaning you could break, you could cut it, but you respect it because of its beauty. So they say here, as you see, it's a beautiful system. The woman tells the husband, "Dad, we have a problem with impurity," and he keeps off. But yeah, because the women didn't want the husband to get near them. So now this creates a real problem in the Orthodox community, where it's imposed on people, and when you try to roll it back, it's almost impossible. But it causes several problems. I mean, this lady is actually, this woman is following in the footsteps of her ancestors, because this is one area where she has the power to control her husband and not the other way around. But the serious problem today with keeping the period as is, 6 or 7 days plus of the 7 days, is what is called halachic infertility, where a woman cannot get pregnant because she misses the right time for that. And in other cases, just the tremendous stress and guilt of young couples who cannot follow the system. So this is just, for me, it's an example of like one halakha that affects so many lives, so many people. And when you bring it to the rabbis, most of the rabbis ignore it, and they are not willing to admit there's a problem. Let us address it in the traditional manner and find a solution for the people. But underneath the surface, this is just one voice. There are many, many people like that. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this is hopefully in the future, Talmidei Chachamim will rise to the occasion and do something about that. Okay.